Super. So, see, this next panel had a very interesting genesis. We started thinking about who are the people, young founders will want to hear from. We obviously thought of Manish, who's an absolute gaming veteran. We thought of Nishant, who sort of probably understands ads and monetization and user acquisition better than anybody else in this country. We thought of Pooja, who, at least in my experience, understands gaming psychology and gamer psychology more than anybody else I've met. And then sort of this panel started coming together for us, which was more to say the very nature of gaming's changed, right? And I think Kshitij alluded to that a little bit around games are being cross-platform, games are taking much longer engagement cycles with users. IDF is obviously creating a certain set of circumstances for how games come together. And that, to us, has led to evolution of multiple platforms. So I'll introduce my panelists, I'll get all of them on, and then we'll get started talking about how games have evolved.
Yep.
Super. So as I was saying, one thing, having invested in gaming for about 10 years now, we've consistently seen how over this last decade, the nature of gaming's evolved. And that means how games get distributed, how gamer engagement happens, how gaming monetization happened, all that are starting to see new ways and new models of these happening. And what that means is now there are newer platforms and new ways to enable all these different aspects of gaming. And I think I have the perfect set of panelists to talk to us about these sort of evolutions. I have Manish with me, who needs no introduction. Manish ran Nazara for about 8 years. He's building the largest Web3 DAO, IndiGG, right now. Before that, he's run leadership roles across a number of content and multimedia companies like UTE, Reliance, and a bunch of others. So I'm very glad to have Manish with us. I have Pooja with me, who is the co-founder and CEO of Turnip. She will talk to you a little bit more of what she's building at Turnip. But before Turnip, she's been with Razorpay, Housing, and a bunch of other very high-growth tech companies in this country. And I also have Nishant, who runs the Meta platform. And I think, again, very few people understand ads and user acquisition and publisher monetization like Nishant does. So very privileged to have all three of them and start talking a little bit deeper on how games have changed in the last decade for us. So Manish, I'll start with you. You've sort of seen games being built in Nazara. Now you work with a number of early stage game publishers and indies and a few other people. What have been some big shifts you have seen across how games are tested, how games engage with their users? And from that, maybe it's a good segue also to talk about what then led you to building IndiGG, what are you trying to do there, and how that sort of fits into the larger picture of where gaming is going.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, first of all, having me here. Guys, we need some energizer, I think. The masterclass from Sid was too intense. Sid, kidhar hai yaar? Yeah, I've been doing gaming since 2010 and came into this as serendipity. And the only thing which I have seen in last 13 years is constant is the change. The gaming business models will keep changing, that's for sure. And every 4, 5, 6 years, if you do not change, you will become a pager. So I think that's where, and I don't know, some of the youngsters here know pager. Oldies like me there used to be a device for communication, guys, called pager, which people used to use and communicate before mobile era.
There might be people here who don't know what landline is.
Landline is, exactly. So I think I came into the industry when there was a transition which was happening from paid games to freemium. And it was App Store which kind of really launched a freemium business model in 2010. And prior to that, it was the same. You used to buy a PC for an Xbox or a console or a PlayStation, and then the same model was mobile. You will buy a paid app. And then Apple made a change saying that we will do freemium. And a lot of people kind of bullshitted two things: mobile as a device and freemium as a business model. And we heard Sid talking about building an amazing business model around freemium. And today, the entire gaming industry has seen a growth in last decade on mobile freemium business model. So I think the only thing which is constant in gaming is change, and that continues to change and evolve. What has not changed is me saying that India will become a superpower. Right? I've been saying this since 2010. In every forum which I have gone, whether it's IGDC or GDC or PGC, and I hope I see that day of India truly becoming by revenue, not by downloads. Facebook is very good in saying downloads. Let's kind of talk about what kind of gaming revenues can we create. And if we are able to really create a $10 billion, $12 billion domestic market, I think that is the day I would be feeling very happy that India has truly become a gaming superpower. So that has not changed. What has really changed is the compounding of your UA cost. Your LTVs, there are a lot more people fighting for the same share of wallet. Shelf lives of big games have become bigger. The smaller games have become smaller. And the big studios, in gaming, another thing which you will see is big studios gobble up or acquire small studios because their own growth of games really kind of doesn't happen. And if they become listed, they have even bigger problem because they have to show quarter-on-quarter growth, year-on-year growth. Their valuations are of future prediction, which they have done a good Excel sheet modeling. And after that Excel sheet modeling, they need to know fresh growth. And then they need to really figure out how to grow more guys. So the beauty of gaming industry is the gaming companies that sell by gaming. And from that perspective, I think it's a beautiful industry because you don't need to look at for exits. And for VCs, it's a natural exit path which they can really look at. And that has been happening for the last 20, 25, 30 years, if you see. So I believe that fundamentally, if you were to look at the slope of LTV CAC ratios is becoming difficult. And it is becoming even more challenging when you don't have network effect of users as a large publisher. And how do you really do that? And in that context is where I believe the next 5, 7, 8 years is going to be community-driven models, where you kind of really bring in your communities very early into the game. They become your co-owner of your game. They become almost like a cooperative model in which they own equity equivalent. And then they are really economically vested. They like your game, they have fun, and they're also getting economic benefit, and they become their evangelist of your own product. And I think that evangelism is the way you can really solve your LTV CACs, because your word of mouth is almost leading to CAC is equal to 0. And because you are a consumer of the same product, which has direct benefit to you economically, your LTVs can be better. So that's what I believe would really kind of change. Otherwise, you raise money from VC, give it to Facebook, that model is not going to continue. It's not sustainable. That needs to kind of really change. And that can only change when there is a direct pipe between game and gamer. And that value creation is happening at both ends and sharing is happening at both ends. So that's what we are building. We are trying to build some kind of an access platform which can really achieve a very equitable, democratized value creation for all stakeholders. And let's see where we go. This is a thesis, lots of unknown, but that's the thrill of doing it third time, of coming to freemium first and then doing esports and doing this. So we will figure it out over a period of time. But essentially, we believe, how do we build gamer first communities? And it's not just in India, in countries where you have large young population with avid gamers who spend huge amount of time. And how do we really kind of harness their time and skill to generate income for themselves? Could be a primary hook for them to come together on a platform. And if that platform, you can really give them more fame and give them combination of rights to govern, I think there will be a lot more sticky communities which you can form. And if you, as I said, add an economic benefit of ownership of that platform, which is creating wealth for everyone in the community, then the community really remains together. And I think that's what we are trying to build. We started a year back. We have got 1 million+ gamers on this platform without a single CAC spent. And now we expanded to Brazil very soon, and we want to go to countries like Egypt, Indonesia, Turkey, wherever there is a mid to low per capita income, huge amount of time and skill available. And can these markets become digital factories for the global games? That's what we're trying to figure out.
No, makes a lot of sense. And since we spoke a lot about LTV and CAC, I'll come to you, Nishant, because I think you understand both sides of this equation quite well, and you see a lot of game studios, publishers, indies optimize for both sides of this equation. So maybe make it a little real for us as you look at the best publishers and studios today. What do you see them do differently in the last 1 or 2 years, both on user acquisition side and then also on the monetization side?
Yeah, so the product that I work on at Meta, it's a monetization platform for developers. What is unique about gaming in this ecosystem? So I work with multiple genres of publishers. I work with gaming, I work with utility, I work with news. What is interesting with gaming is that there is a sort of a cyclical view between monetization and acquisition that is unique to gaming. About a couple of years back, we in fact pivoted our entire strategy where we said that we will actually primarily become a gaming ad network, because when an advertiser comes onto the Meta platform, they have an option to show their ads on Facebook, Instagram, and what we call Audience Network, which is essentially a collection of mobile apps, right? And what we saw was that the value the Audience Network was driving for the advertisers was higher than the other two platforms, which is unique, when it comes to the larger play that we were seeing with other advertisers. So that's when we decided that there needs to be a clear synergy between monetization, acquisition, growth of the game, and it's a cyclical play. So it's really important to have a clear view in terms of what your strategy is pre-launch, what your strategy is at launch. Are you looking at a strategy where you're looking for a longer shelf life, or are you looking for short durations and the strategy is to build newer games? And where we come in is to give you sort of a view on what some of the acquisition principles would be. Where are the stages where you need to, probably invest in terms of, acquiring users. It's not always that we see that, a game can grow organically, since primarily our work is on ads. So the strategy that we provide is going to be ad-centric, right? It's important to understand what type of strategy you have in terms of the users that you're going for. We typically see many cases where, there is a tendency to follow trends. So over the last 10 years, the number of Ludo games, the number of Carrom games, the number of cricket games that we work with, not all of them hit it out of the park. I think there is a general sense of feeling that because there is large scale in India, it's going to be a revenue spinner. So Play Simple Games and some of the others, couple of others are unique examples of where we've seen a game that has a global audience do really well, but we've not seen that happen in many cases. It's very rare. And some of these when folks follow trends, it's it's only a few games that really become really big. So, and these same names have been been on our platform for the longest time. So there are a bunch of things, but yeah, I mean, just understanding what is the strategy that you're going for in terms of what type of users and building accordingly would be a good start.
And you talk a lot about how sort of gamer behavior is changing, how game engagement is changing. So talk to us a little bit about this trend which sort of caught your eye, and then what was that inspiration to build Turnip? And since then, what have been learnings around this over gamer engagement trend that you're seeing?
So it is, Vas, I wasn't exactly a gamer before 2018. And my image of a traditional gamer were my friends and my founders sitting in IT Guwahati labs playing Dota and CSGO all night long. And in movies, you see that, okay, there are these really hardcore gamers sitting in their mom's basement. Well, honestly, that's what I thought gamers were, geeks. But in 2018, it for the first time it caught my eye. I was at Razorpay, and I started realizing that every single person around me had started gaming. Very different kinds of games, and much more focused on mobile. So I remember my mother called me up one day and she was like, "Hey, can you help us install this Ludo game? Because me, my dad, and some of our aunties will sit together and play Ludo." My sister and brother, who are doctors and are extremely mobile first, they don't own a laptop. They were like, you know what? We have started playing PUBG, this game called PUBG, and we play it all day long. And I was like, wait, what is happening? Razorpay, I started seeing that, okay, everybody, my designers, my marketing folks, my customer support folks, at lunch tables, nobody was talking to each other anymore. That's what parents complain about, right? Everybody was sitting and playing PUBG. They were like, "अरे 30 minutes का game कर लेते हैं जल्दी से, उसके बाद break के बाद काम करेंगे." And this is very surprising. None of these were like tech first folks. And to my great surprise, it was crossing your economic and gender divides. Like there was a small parlor I used to go to in Kormangla to get my hair done. And the girls there, the makeup girls, they used to sit and play PUBG. And I was like, whoa, what is happening? Same thing I noticed with Swiggy delivery boys. They used to sit outside restaurants waiting for their food to get prepared. And they were all on their games. And this was, I quote this all the time because it was so surprising. I was in this Uber ride, and we all know how Uber drivers are in Bangalore. It's all traffic all the time. So this guy was talking on his phone on loudspeaker, like most of them do. And he was telling his girlfriend, "Ki yaar, tu aur PUBG na life ho meri." And I was like blown. I was like, "Ye kya chal raha hai?" And so it was like a very I saw this over like 3-4 months, and I got very, very curious that, hey, something massive is happening. I haven't seen people engage so much. I haven't seen people discuss something so much and spend so much time on, apart from like social media. And I was like, "Samajhna to padega, what's happening?" And I think that's when I started getting into the whole gaming ecosystem. I started playing myself, not PUBG. I play SimCity. Please don't judge me for that. I spent a lot of money on SimCity though, almost like 1 lakh. Please don't judge me for that either. But I think I started understanding what the whole thing is about. Games early on were like an amazing form of entertainment. I mean, reality is boring, right? That's why all of us watch movies. But games, initial games, it took it one step forward. It became immersive. Now, instead of just reading about Harry Potter, or let's say, just watching a movie, you could go inside that world. You could be a part of that world. Or let's say Super Mario. You could engage with the characters. You could move around. And then I think the next wave came, which is games became social. And this is what I feel is the most interesting parts of games. Whether it was, back like I think 5-6 years back, when it was mostly LAN. Like I remember in housing, a lot of my friends used to do this every day. That post work, they used to sit around for like an hour or two, and they used to connect their laptops and they used to play CSGO. And it was a thing which people did together. Like, how we sit in bars and how we just drink. It's like that common activity which is bonding all of us together. Baat kitna karenge na 2 ghante. And this, or let's say, I'm sure all of you play something like how everybody sits together and plays FIFA. You feel like you're doing this together. It's like a nice bonding session. With online multiplayer, this just increased multifold. You didn't have to have like those 4 friends come together to your house. I don't want to sound like a cliche, but your friends could be anywhere in the world, and that's a big thing. I am in Bangalore. I could be playing PUBG with somebody in Kolkata who might be as passionate about the game as I am. And that is very, very powerful. So I noticed this in SimCity. I started playing it as research. It was a fun game. And then I joined this club. SimCity has clubs. And it has a nice hierarchy. There's a VP, there's a president, there are members. I was like a low member. And every week there used to be these club fights where you used to go to war with another clubs and you had to buy all of these weapons and you had to make your club proud. And I think this was the part of the game which was the most fun for me. I kept doing it entire COVID time. And people I met there, I didn't even know their ages. They were all, pseudo names. I don't know which countries they were from. But those were the 7-8 people I became friends with. Like, on a community, we used to talk about it. And I wanted to make them feel proud. I wanted to, contribute to my club war. And that's why I spent all the money. And so I think that's why we started Turnip. Turnip is essentially a platform where gamers come together and they talk about gaming and their life. So what we said was that, hey, you meet people and then you talk inside the game, you play the game, but that's like 30 minutes or 1 hour. What about after that? You still have bonded with those people. You want to talk about other things. On Turnip, you can essentially do that. You start your gaming club and then you talk about everything. You start a PUBG club, but then you tell your friends how your school went, or you tell your friends, how your girlfriend ditched you, or what food you had. It becomes your place to hang out. And I think that's what we realized at Turnip. And the growing conviction over the last 3 years has been that this is wonderful. Like, we are in about 20 countries now, like in Philippines, in Brazil, in India. And it's the same thing. People need a place to belong. Nobody wants to be alone, right? We are so invested in finding like-minded people. So it's a very special feeling when people come together around a game which they play. They start discussing around the game and then they continue for years. Like, we have had clubs which have been continuing and talking for like a year almost, or 6 months. And they've become online friends. And it's a nice place to hang out.
Now you're seeing studios and publishers communities to popularize their games, user acquisition, engagement, monetization.
So I think, at least with communities, it's slightly different. Like, if I have to take the US example, like, we are building majorly for emerging markets because we are focused on your mobile first consumers. But if you look at developed markets, we have Reddit, we have Discord, which are doing an amazing work in the community space. It's not like you have to win the trust for the community. You can't just go there and say that, hey, I'm going to pay you so much and do X number of things. Like, PUBG has to come and they have to show the community that they care about them and they care about the game itself, and do some sort of a thing which is immersive for the community. For example, esports blends pretty well with communities. These gamers, they love gaming anyway, and you tell them that, hey, we'll organize this small contest and you get everybody, you get your friends, and then we'll do like a big activation. So those sort of events actually work really well. The second thing which works is working through streamers. A lot of these community leaders are also your early streamers, people who love broadcasting their games. So one way, at least I've seen game developers work with streamers, is that they say that, okay, it's not every stream is going to be paid, but if you love our game, please stream it, talk about it in your community, and the community members listen to these streamers. And then we'll pay you and have some sort of benefits for your community also. So these are the two ways I see, at least, game developers engage with these communities. But you can't brute force. You can't just say that, hey, I'll pay so much and I'll get into every single community. You have to really put in the effort. And a lot of these bigger game orgs, what they've started doing this, they have these specialized community teams, which the job is just to keep engaging with these streamers and these communities and build like a relationship. And I think, as just one thing I wanted to point out is, if you actually do it well, the cost of promoting your game actually becomes really low, because now they actually love your game. Ask, like, for example, if you're releasing like a new feature, or if you're releasing like a new skin, give them early access, make them your beta testers. They also feel proud, and they do a lot of word of mouth marketing also for you. So this becomes like your nice organic channel, which you can have on top of your existing ads channel.
That's quite interesting. And, we've had a lot of conversation this evening about how sort of the LTV CAC equations are changing. I think for a lot of founders here, being aware of what these new platforms are, what these new distribution models are, engagement models are. And I think many of these, we're seeing games try out quite early, right? It's not like you have to hit a certain scale before you try these out. So just doing that. The next thing I want to touch with all three of you was, we have a number of very early stage founders here, and all three of you have a very unique vantage point of where you're seeing gaming from. What is one thing which feels like fringe or feels like very small today, but you three feel very strongly to say next decade, when I look at it, this is going to define gaming, and you better take notice, right? If you're somebody building in this space, it is the wave to ride. So maybe I'll start with you, Manish. What is one thing you feel very passionate about, saying this is where gaming is going?
I think I'll just pick up building your. So last decade, we used to say that you need to really get your prototype right, and you need to quickly test it. But I think I'll just add on to that, building your early communities and making them, co-opting them literally in this process of pre-alpha, beta, take that. Whether you kind of really have testers coming in, or your Discord management happening by them, or your community support happening. I think there could be so many decentralized functions which you can really use and co-opt them is the way for the development. And this is not something which you had in Web2 a studio, and then you will have some external partners through which you will do it. I think that closed ecosystem of development will fundamentally change. And that's where your community-driven development process is going to be the way to do that. And with a lot of your cycles of content creation being crashed through tools which are now coming up, you can really co-opt a lot of community, even in your fan art, in your content art, in your maps, in your all of these things. Even your development cycle or development decisions, not cycle, could be very differently done. So I think the entire dev manner in which you go about could be far more open and co-opting rather than the closed one is what I feel.
Very interesting. And you talk about community more even in the dev phase versus the phase where you put a game out. So that's an interesting one for people to keep an eye out for. Pooja, what are you picking up?
So I think I'll speak a bit about how I think monetization is going to evolve. So in the last 5-6 years, I think what we've started seeing is that, for example, PC and console games were very game sales driven from the very start. I think when mobile games started coming, they started doing a lot of ads, and that became one of the primary channels. But slowly, I see in terms of mobile, console, and PC games that the share of revenues which are being done by microtransactions is actually increasing quite a bit. So, for example, I think let's take Activision as a set. They did about, I think, 5.3 billion through their microtransactions and DLCs, and about 4 billion in their game sales. And same thing happened with Epic also. Like, all of us know that Fortnite almost did 1.2 billion in their first year itself. And all of that was through microtransactions and DLCs. A similar thing, and mobile is obviously PUBG has done a lifetime revenue of about 10 billion, and almost all of that is through microtransactions, which is amazing to see that very slowly the appetite of people paying for games, paying for skins, paying for more maps, is it increasing? And it's largely correlated to how engaged you are. So for example, if I love a game, I'm going to buy a new map because I love it. I want to play it more. Or if I love Fortnite, I'm going to buy a new skin. If I love PUBG, I'm going to buy a new gun. Same thing comes to your community products also. Like Discord did revenues of almost 400 million last year. And Discord's revenues are almost 100% through engagement. When a community is monetized, what you can essentially do is community members can buy something which is called Nitro, where essentially your server gets certain perks like higher file uploads, etc. And this is sort of like community members gifting a boost up to the whole server itself. And 400 million is a great number. So I just feel like more and more in the next 10 years, the willingness to pay for things you're more engaged on will keep increasing. The second thing is, a few years back, most of this revenue was coming through developed markets. Of course, it's still largely tilted towards developed markets and China. But if you look at India, which is growing, if you look at Southeast Asia or Brazil, they are actually, the entire emerging markets just through in-app transactions is about like a 10 billion market now, which is like a pretty cool thing. Like, think about it, like people from Indonesia and Vietnam and Brazil, they're contributing so much money. This will only exponentially grow up. So I think personally, if you want to build something where you can promise very strong engagement hooks, it's a great time to build and think about engagement-based monetization SKUs. Obviously on top of your ad SKUs.
Oh, very interesting. And we're seeing this across a bunch of our other portfolio companies as well. So this old narrative that, in India or in developing countries, in-app purchases, microtransactions are not going to add up. I think there's good signs that you should stop believing in that narrative and start building to really leverage that trend.
No, and just to kind of look at data, 2017, India was 50 million IAP. Now it's 500 to 600 million IAP. Indonesia has moved to 1.3 billion. And I think there is a lot of influence of China, which is really creating a percentage paying to playing user ratio. But I think there has been certain statutory overhang. If that wouldn't be there, I think Indian gaming market would have been now crossing $1 billion. And if the stability on non-RMG part continues the way it is, at least for the next 2-3 years, the price it's $1 billion market, because the social context of gaming, and there's an interesting data which I came across when I was talking to a large game publisher who makes a lot of money from India. The 45% of the money was being spent on vanity items. It was not being spent on items or consumables, as we call, which will influence gameplay. Which means that as you and I get ready for a party and wear whatever it is, there is a virtual party happening in that social setting, in that community, and people are really getting up and dressing up.
Absolutely.
So I think that whole mainstreaming of virtual hangouts, and then that's cool to meet in virtual things, is already quite mainstream in India. So you're absolutely right. I think the key is, can you figure out a code loop, which is super, super exciting, and that's very difficult to do. Yeah.
I think I completely agree. Like, when I was a kid, I wouldn't have thought that virtual is so real.
Correct.
But kids these days, like for like 15 years, 17 years, virtual is as real as physical to them.
I think 9, 10, 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, Roblox and Fortnite.
Exactly. And,
Yeah.
and they're
Bulk
very
of pocket
proud
money
of
goes
it.
there. Correct.
And they're very proud of their collections online. For example, a digital sneaker is as good as to them as like a Nike physical sneaker for me.
Just an insight from what we saw from community. We distributed roughly $1 million of income for the gamers this year. Most of these guys don't want this money to go to their parents' account. They want to keep it with themselves. So, and we said that some of the guys said, we don't have a PAN card for us to withdraw. And we said, take your parents' PAN card and do your KYC. They said, no, this is our money. and where do they want to spend? Is on virtual items. So whether it's a seasonal pass, which is their favorite, or the digital helmet or whatever, the skin graphic you want to really look at. And they're all, I'm telling you, very eagerly looking for P2P marketplaces. Whether the statutory happens or not happen, but P2 marketplaces in India are going to happen much faster.
And I think this UPI also is an amazing financial structure. I think that itself is like, I know India is a pioneer in that. But it just makes payments and microtransactions so much easier than like a credit card or something. That's also one of the reasons even I am super bullish on India. Payments have to be simple and for microtransactions to grow that much.
Oh, spot on. Makes a lot of sense. Nishant, what's one big shift you think people are not noticing today?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's one thing I can point out to. It's like it's a multifaceted thing. I think we spoke about competition between, competition in the gaming ecosystem. There's also as much competition in the ad platform ecosystem, which I'm part of. And the kind of questions and the kind of, solutions that gaming companies are looking for are way more complex now than it used to be, let's say, 5-6 years back. So, when we make sort of a 5-year, 10-year view, we look at some of these, existing changes that have happened. And what's happened over the last 2 years is, obviously there was a lull after COVID when, obviously time spent went through the roof. Then there was IDFA and signal loss that affected, the entire ecosystem. We ourselves as Meta had our challenges around privacy and enforcement. If there are partners here who use our products, will be aware of that. So, when we did a consolidation and planned for the next 5 to 10 years, what we realized is that there needs to be some stability that we bring, and also there needs to be foundational changes based on what these new and more complex asks are from advertisers and publishers. So one is around business model itself. Earlier, things used to be pretty black and white in terms of IAA, IAP. It was a pretty clear structure. Now there are more hybrid models, a deeper understanding of the user. They have a much deeper understanding, of their business model. So partners like us and others have to evolve to that. It's important for, new companies to understand what these, more hybrid business models are. The second is obviously measurement. It's a tricky one because a lot of developers work with third-party MMPs to tackle measurement. They'll come to us and tell us that, your measurement metrics do not match these MMPs. So it's critical to, choose the right MMP. It's critical to go to your ad platform and say that there is a mismatch. So it's the onus is on us to understand how those gaps are fixed. There is a real need and, really savvy developers come to us and tell us that, for example, somebody like a Meta probably doesn't have a clear value proposition from an in-app ad strategy perspective, So the idea for platforms like us is also create a specific in-app ads platform for gaming, right? And what that will lead to is, or how that will happen is, we create optimization levers that, currently are available, but we are sort of painting the same brush across the board, right? So that specificity towards gaming needs to happen. An understanding of, what is happening from a regulatory standpoint, what is happening from a privacy and signal loss standpoint. There are more changes coming. It's, so the entire market has to move towards figuring out, contingencies for that, how do we pivot? But the good thing there is because, some of this is caused by sort of 1 or 2 platforms, it gives other platforms an opportunity to create models of distribution. We can come in like Meta in terms of like a third distribution channel potentially. There could be a payment infrastructure as well that somebody like a Meta can build. So, while these are sort of challenges, there are also opportunities that can come through this. And lastly, my core responsibility at the company is to look at monetization, ad monetization. So when we target users, so let's say I'm working with a developer, and when we target a user to monetize that property, we are looking at users who use the Facebook platform. So what we are seeing is that the type of content, obviously, that users are consuming now is also evolving. They're looking at short form videos, right? So to build formats that sort of streamline along with those kind of strategies is also important. So yeah, it's a bunch of things. It's not one thing, but these are some of the areas where we see a real tectonic shift. And to be honest, these questions are coming to us. So it's the onus is on actually us to provide solutions for these. And I think if these solutions come through from platforms like us that help these folks generate money, I think we are in for something good in the next few years.
No, at least if I think of both the discussions, it feels like building games has become more complex. It's more competitive. There's a bunch of shifts happening, but at the same time, there are a lot of positives going for it, like taking off of microtransactions, communities are coming alive, more platforms and more all distribution models. So probably no time to build like now. And maybe we'll open up for a networking chat now, open up for dinner here. I won't take questions now in the interest of time, but all our panelists will be around, we'll all be around, so we can get into more deeper discussions there.
Yeah, thank you.